I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We are live for the first time on slow motion broadcasting with the FF Weekend Warriors. We're at Sebring this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I saw a little bit of rain here in the practice session, but we'll get to that here in 1 second. My name is Adam Thompson. I'm joined in the booth by Randall McGrew.
These three going right at it. We see you're getting really, really squirrely. There.
Oh, no!
Some contact. Oh, no. Jurg and Antonio, the two Masters leaders, both with issues and now dropping down the order.
There's a dicing through the curbs. Our lead two. As that's Instaman just slossing it up the inside through McIntyre there. Beautifully done by the Icelandic driver as there's a big incident happened behind somewhere. Gonzaga losing a lot of places back.
Almost touching at that point. They're around there heading into the closing stages of the track. Not quite there yet. Heading through what I'm calling the horseshoe, but let's not get into my drawing skills at this point. Nothing but clear track ahead of them at this point, so no one should be able to interfere in that battle. Side by side, nearly had contact there. That's going to put Kabanka on the inside for this next hairpin. This could be what decides it, and he's gone right on the outside, actually trying to cover off the car. I do wonder if Barry is going to be close enough to potentially slipstream. They've got 2 corners left to go. This is penultimate one now. Barry right up close, 0.3 of a second. I'm not sure it's going to be close enough, 0.2 of a second. He's got to keep his foot on that loud pedal. Catches a little bit of a curve, but has Kabanka done it? Barry going to the inside, and Kabanka gets it.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and for one last time this season, welcome back to the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. This is the 13th round of this season, coming to you today from Tsukuba. My name is Ron Maunz, and alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Daniel Zippy Salmon. And now, Zippy, we're crowning some champions today, and we're doing it at a very unique racetrack. Tsukuba is actually the first track I ever drove on in my iRacing career, and well before then, I'd probably done hundreds of laps around this place on Forza Motorsports 4 as a kid. I don't know what it is, but I really seem to like this track. It's like catnip to me, and I feel like it's a perfect choice to bring this season to a close. But as we were kind of talking about before we went live here, I feel like you may have some slightly different opinions, Zippy.
Yeah, it's definitely not on my Princess-approved track list there, I gotta say, Ron, and I gotta say, oh, Tamara, you're gonna make me blush already. She says, congratulations on the podium yesterday, what a race. That is a great way to start a broadcast, you know, just inflate my ego a little bit. Thank you very much, Tamara, for that. Yeah, no, fantastic race, but definitely not on my Princess-approved track list, Ron. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a very, very talented, you know, to get around here quickly, you've got to have that skill set. I think the word is technical track. And for me, technical, not necessarily always it. My first track at iRacing was actually Daytona, which ironically I just drove this morning. How's that tomorrow? Is that a little bit better? I just bumped myself up a little bit there for you. But I honestly think it's going to be a lot of fun. Certainly the F1600, I think, will be a very good car for this track. And I was discussing a moment ago that the Radical was maybe a little bit too much. But I tell you what, Ron, that's enough about my opinions on the track. Let's take a quick look at these championship points.
Yeah, because we have got some champions to be crowned in the Spec 1 category. Looking very good for James Berry at the front, leading it by over 100 points. 104 points to be a bit more precise. Nearly said the wrong number there, but Berry, he's been dominant all throughout this season. He's the reigning Spec 1 champion here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. Won it in Season 3. Looking to go back-to-back here for Season 4 and finds himself in a very good spot to try and get that job done. The fight for second, though, between McConnell and Jason Green, that may be intriguing. Green, as we discussed at length yesterday with the Formula V Weekend Warriors, finished second in that Clash Championship in the Spec 1 category, so maybe hoping to finish second in this one as well, considering Barry is just untouchable at this point in time. My eye is on the fight between Kevin Adrian and Ian Joyner for fourth, because those two are separated by 2 points heading into the final race of this season, and you may not have to discount Daniel Tufts in that fight as well. Julian Ditchburn, George Gonzaga, Kane Lasky, and Jeff Jacobson running at your top 10 in the Spec 1 point standings. Gonna be moving on to Spec 2 here now. It's looking very good for our SMB colleague, Mr. Joshua Wilkie. It's not as big of a gap that Barry has in the Spec 1 category, but it's pretty good. And when it comes to drop rounds and all that stuff, a little bit disingenuous in terms of the Spec 1 point standings, because Barry does have a couple of bad drop rounds, including one where he didn't even make it to the race because of some other obligations with some Radical SR10 racing on a different broadcaster that we will not mention by name. But with the Spec 2s, it's looking pretty good for our very own Josh Wilkie in the 223 car. 715 points on the board. He's been a standout star in the Spec 2 category all throughout this season. Maybe gonna be seeing him in red next year, and I'm not saying that he's gonna be driving a Ferrari, and I will just leave it at that. Bill Walker in P2, Paul Jackson in third, Love and Verone running at your top 5 in Spec 2, which is fairly spread out. Now we're going to move on to the Masters, and this may be a class that we have to keep our eyes on, not necessarily in terms of the championship fight. Looking pretty good for Jorg Mani at the front there over Brad Cathcart, with nearly 200 points separating those two races. Fantastic season for Jorg Mani. It's going to be Jim Brewster, Stevie Ray, and Alan DeGassis running at your top 5 in the Masters standings. But the thing that I want to keep tabs on when it comes to some of these Masters drivers, Zippy, and we kind of talked about this before the broadcast began here, they're looking pretty quick in terms of the speed that they showed in practice. Jorg Mani actually set the pace in that practice session earlier on, and Antonio Reese, another Masters racer, they were 1-2 in that practice session. And as it stands at the moment in qualifying, you've got Mani in second, and you have to go all the way back down to 7th to Antonio Reese. So looking like the Masters driver is going to be a bit of a thorn in the side for some of these racers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just because they're in the Masters class by any means, that does not mean that they are slow, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely not. And I got to say, I've had a lot of fun racing these guys recently. You know, I did get to come out in the Formula Vs, and actually, that man who's just ahead of him, that's Trenton Kramer. I got to say, thank you for the setup, Trenton. He was certainly having mixed emotions when we was going wheel to wheel yesterday. But you know what? We're going to leave the Formula Vs in the past for the moment. Certainly, I'm a fan. We'll leave it at that. Let's see if we can try and find a driver here to go on board with. I guess pick a number there, Ron.
Pick a number out of a hat. Usually whenever I do that, I get a very strange number that says made in China, but gonna try and find a driver to give a quick little lap guide around this racetrack, trying to see who may be nearing the conclusion of their current laps. Trying to figure out, here we go. Here's the driver. This is Edgar Sancinelli in the 257 car. Riding on board with him now, heading off into turn number 1, a pretty heavy braking zone, a good overtaking opportunity as well to kick this lap off. A pretty decent hairpin, and then you've got some nice meandering turns to deal with. That's turn 2, now into turn 3. This is a real fun corner. Turn number 4 kind of gives that vibe of like turn 3 at Zandvoort, which we visited just 1 week ago. It's a pretty good corner, that. And now we're heading off through turn number 5. This is the alteration, running the moto layout here today with that chicane, the turn 6 and 7 chicane. Going to be a very quick ride for those racers. May cause a little bit of a stack up come time for lap 1. Here's another heavy braking zone. That's turn number 9. Had that small little kink, the left-handed kink kink of turn number 8 to keep you on your toes, but that's still going to be a good overtaking opportunity. However, if you get it a little bit wrong, you may be in for a world of trouble. And now this is the final corner, turn number 10. From my past experience running some Formula Ford official races around this very track, I can assure you that that corner is a real pain in the butt. Gotta see some drivers mega sideways, slideways coming out of that corner all throughout, not just this qualifying session, but the race we have coming up. And that's a very quick lap guide around this very small racetrack.
Yeah, definitely it's not one of the longer ones on the circuit with these guys posting their lap times under the minute region, but I'm going to see if we can see who's currently battling right now. So right now, if I have a look, Bill Walker's currently leading, oh, sorry, there we go. Bill Walker's currently leading the S2 qualification, and one thing we've got to keep in mind as well is you've got to factor in the draft, ladies and gentlemen. The draft is definitely something to keep in mind, and if you can get a car ahead of you just punching a nice hole in the air, that could be huge in helping you start further up the grid.
Yeah, that's a big thing when it comes to what these racers are going to have on their minds come time for this qualifying session. As much as we've seen some pretty chaotic races in the past this season, I mean, you put a whole bunch of Formula Ford race cars out there on the racetrack. Some fisticuffs are occasionally going to break out, doubly so considering we're running open wheelers, which get a little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact. You're going to see a Formula Ford car end up in low Earth orbit. But a lot of these racers probably going to put a bit more importance in this qualifying session, neglecting the fact that we have some championship fights and these drivers are going to look to try and end this season with a bang. They still need to think about the run through some of the first corners. That turn 1 stack up is going to be treacherous. That's going to be dangerous and quite possibly illegal for some of these racers. It's such an odd section, especially on lap 1 with the rolling starts that we have in this series. And if you're a little bit farther in the back, you're probably going to be gunning it heading through turn number 10, which is the longest corner around this racetrack by far. So some of these racers may be going to apply a bit more pressure onto themselves for this qualifying session. And speaking of, it's slowly being drawn to a close with about a minute and a half left on the clock. So these racers about to start their final laps. It's looking very good for Joyner on the provisional pole. Not looking very good for Andrew Love as he tries to turn his Formula Ford car into a rally car heading down the start-finish straightaway. But Joyner, who won 2 weeks ago, didn't win last week, but he's looking very good in this qualifying session to try and grab the pole unless anyone has anything to say about it.
He certainly had incredible pace this season, and I got to say that there's a lot of drivers in this league with incredible pace. I mean, there's definitely no shortage of people here who are faster than me. Actually, I am just seeing another driver who's just snuck in, actually. Yayun Chen, new driver. Also, as well, we have Boris Essman. So, again, welcome to the Weekend Warriors.
Yeah, Essman, a newcomer in this series. I gotta say, Zippy, I was seeing some of the discussion surrounding Essman and felt like I needed to check my own German heritage because I do have that in spades. My grandfather immigrated to America from Germany back in the early 1900s, and usually I'm not sure what the symbol is, the German S, where it kind of looks like a B. And I was seeing that, I was like, I need to make sure whether it was pronounced as a double S or whether or not my relatives were going to be rolling in their grave throughout this broadcast, but that's not the case. Essman racing here, currently slotted in 26th at the moment, 1.7 seconds off of the pole, and I gotta say, this field incredibly close. I think the biggest gap that we have up and down it is probably Joyner on the pole. You have to go back 3.5 tenths of a second to find Jorg Mati sharing that front row with him for the time being, but we're still gonna see a lot of shuffling going on. Nice lap from Chris Murakami right at the end of this session to jump his way up into the top 10. The Master driver currently slotted third of the Masters racers, P8 overall. That's a very good lap time for him right now. Look at that from Barry jumping his way up to third. Green now to 7th. Lots of drivers trying to set some great lap times to bring this session to a close. That's the way I always like to do it, Zippy. Have no sort of way for your competitors to have any sort of rebuttal to your lap.
Well, absolutely is the way to go. If you can start higher up the grid, it certainly helps. Now, myself, never one really for qualifying pace, and I tend to make my way through the field, not as cleanly as I'd like on occasion. That has come up at times, but certainly a couple of guys still just out doing a couple of laps. In fact, Ian Joyner is still there on the track. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's currently sat on the pole, but, you know, you can't just be like, oh, yeah, I've got a pole and it's in the bag. I mean, you can see he's getting an absolutely fantastic draft up of Antonio Reese ahead of him. This could really slingshot his time a little bit if he can keep his foot in it. Antonio Reese literally punching a hole for him. I'll say it very briefly, he's backed right off now, so we'll have to see how that goes out. Certainly Murakami, he had a good draft behind one of the new drivers. Ian Joyner there practicing the pit entry.
And that's certainly going to be something that may catch some racers out in this race we have coming up. That pit entry, very difficult. You don't really know when that pit lane speed limit is going to start because those cones come out of the blue. You got that Armco barrier on the inside, makes it very, very blind. If there's a car spun on pit entry, have it be known that we may see some aerial acrobatics with some race cars. Who knows, we may end up seeing one of those cars launch and probably end their way up into the South China Sea. But anyways, ready to get things up and rolling from the final race of this season. That's going to be the Brit Ian Joyner starting this race from the pole. Jorg Monty going to join him on the front row. James Barry looking to try and seal the deal in the Spec 1 championship. He's going to be starting in third next to Daniel Tufts in fourth. Bill Walker going to be grabbing the Spec 2 pole position starting this race from fifth. They have Soren Garrett's in sixth, Jason Green in seventh, Antonio Reese starting this race from the eighth starting spot. Then we have Chris Murakami in ninth and Kevin Adrian rounding out your top 10.
As we have a look, we then have Andrew Love in P11 with Fortulo. That's interesting. He snuck into a Formula 1600, so he's very talented in a Formula V, and he's gone and he's got a bit of a beefier car today. He's there in 12th with Michael McConnell alongside, well, just behind, sorry, in 13th with Brad Cathcart in 14th, Chris Montgomery and Stevie Ray take 15th and 16th with Joshua Wilkie and Daniel Verone in 17th and 18th. Paul Jackson takes 19th, and Michael Nelson, the Denmark driver, in 20th.
And then looking through the rest of the starters we have in this grid, we have Alan DeGassis in the 904 car starting this race in 21st, Edgar Sancinelli in 22nd, Trenton Kramer going to be starting this race in 23rd, Michelle Lynn, who's usually a Formula V staple, very similar to Thortulo. So it's two Formula V drivers making their appearance here in the Formula Fords. Michelle going to be starting in 24th. Then we have Adam Bradshaw in 25th, Julian Chen starting this race from the 26th position, Boris Essman in 27th, Russell Telker in 28th, Jeff Wubker starting this race in 29th, Russ Lundberg in 30th, and rounding out your 31 car grid is going to be the Canadian of David Payne in the 273 car. One last grid, one last starting grid to go through from this season. 13 races strong, considering it's a 14-week iRacing season. So I was kind of talking about this in the other Formula V broadcast with Josh Wilkie, who we will be seeing taking the green flag in a couple of moments' time. I think it won't be, I mean, Zippy, you'll probably be a bit more privy to this information than me, but they follow usually like leap years in terms of when to have a 14-week season. So I guess the next time we'll be having a 13-race Weekend Warrior season isn't going to be until 2028. So savor this 13th round for the time being while we still have it throughout the rest of today's racing action here. From the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Fords, you'll be able to catch later on, but for the Formula Fords right now, that pace car going to make the turn to come down pit lane. The field now in the hands of our pole sitter. The green flag's down. The drivers are on their way, careening their way into turn number one. Some three-wide action already with Monty, Barry, and Tufts. Nearly contact with Barry and Monty heading off through turn number one. I think that was contact through the corner, but looking now, Barry trying to fight like hell to remain in that podium spot. Daniel Tufts with a whole lot of momentum heading off it to turn number four. Gonna get that move done as we see a whole lot side-by-side action farther in the back and some contact. I think that's Brad Cathcart making a small amount of contact with Chris Murakami wheel to wheel. Saw that car pop up into the air. Very lucky for both those racers to get away with that fairly scot-free. I say that though, Cathcart dropping down to 30th right at the start of this race. Not ideal in the least for the Aussie.
Well, definitely a very, very busy start there, and don't get me wrong, it's going to happen when you get a grid of this size. You know, it can definitely accordion, as I certainly found out yesterday, but certainly a lot of good fun here. As you see here, Daniel Tufts currently riding in P3, and he has James Barry right behind him. I do not envy the position that man is in. He's going to have to work very, very hard. Ian Joyner already pulled out about half a second gap now, and you can see it looks like that's Bill Walker. Yeah, Bill Walker, he's got Soren Garrett's going up on the inside. In fact, it might even be two cars. Antonio Reese looking to have a sniff as well.
This is going to be a very fast-paced race here today. Zippy seeing some racing action up and down the grid. Reese trying to get that move done on Walker. Contact. Walker fighting back, and they come to blows. Coming through turn number four, and he gets hit again. That was Kevin Adrian making contact with Antonio Reese. Those two cars are linked together. That's going to be a game-set match for the both of them. A small little love tap between Reese and Walker. Spins Reese around, and you can see that left rear falling off of Antonio Reese's 914 race car. That's such a heartbreaker for the Portuguese driver because he's been so fast all throughout the season, really fast in that practice session earlier on, fast in qualifying as well, but a small little love tap heading through the corner. It's going to send Reese around. Walker gets away with that fairly scot-free. Kevin Adrian really with nowhere to go, as those two cars were basically merged in with each other for a couple of moments' time. Reese backing it into the barrier, and Reese is going to be out of it.
Well, it's definitely not the result that he was looking for. See Jason Green here giving a little bit of a battle. Bill Walker right beside, and Fortulo looking to get a little bit of a nose in there. Chris Murakami, he's got a front row seat for this right now. Let's go on board. You can see these guys too wide right behind him even, sorry, Andrew Love as well. Lots of action going on here at the Weekend Warriors, taking on Tsukuba.
Yeah, these drivers are taking on this racetrack. I feel like they're also tackling it as well, because this is a sort of racetrack where as much as you need to have a little bit of finesse in some sections, sometimes especially when you're racing hard, trying to battle for every single position that you can get, may have to apply a little bit of brute force from time to time. And right as I say that, Montgomery going for the dive on Stevie Ray. That is a bold move from Chris Montgomery. Don't want to go for a kamikaze dive bomb like that on the series admin. That's usually not going to end very well, but it didn't end in a position gain for Montgomery. May end in a position gaining for Wilkie, because he's caught up to the two of these racers. We're running on board with the driver of the 223 car. Maybe he's going to go for a move heading off into turn number 1. Oh, he will be going for the dive. There we go. Right, I was going to say he was going to back out of it. He thought of it. He tried to go for it, just not close enough. That's the thing when it comes to these racers going for some moves. Sometimes you're going to see them cast that line out into the pond. Other times they're going to have the worm attached, thinking that they're going to get a catch, but Wilkie nearly just went for the move again, hang off into turn number 4. And I don't know about you, Zippy, but I feel like turn 4, that's probably going to be the most treacherous spot on this racetrack. A little bit of a hard corner to get right, but if you go for a move like that, heading off into the corner, as we saw with the case of Walker and Reese not terribly long ago, a small little bit of contact can end in absolute disaster.
I do find if it starts getting very hard to make a pass, people do start getting more ambitious, certainly myself included in that. I may have done a little bit of a send on a gentleman yesterday. Something that's happened with Daniel Tufts. I see he's, oh my gosh, he's pooched. All right, let's check the replay and see what happened to the number 34 car.
Oh, that car is wrecked by the barrier. You can see him on the gravel trap that I believe, well, actually in the small little strip of grass right after the gravel trap that I believe was hanging through turn number 10. So let's see what happened here with Tufts. From the small little anecdote I shared earlier on, I can assure you, a very hard corner, but no, that's a hardware failure for him. You can hear no steering. I don't think, looks like he has a little bit of steering in that car, but I think it was his throttle stuck there. I can hear it was pinned at the rev limiter. I don't think he was shifting up at all, so I think there may have been some sort of massive hardware failure for Daniel Tufts. Such a heartbreaker, too, because he was running in a very firm position.
He definitely was. And actually, it looks like one of our newer drivers is getting into a battle, and this person with Michelle Lin. So I'm going to say, definitely, you know, you're going to have some tough competition there. Actually, Yoyan Chen, he's got Russ Telko behind him. He's generally in the Masters for the most part, choosing to be an S2 for this, for the Formula 1600. But Michelle Lin ahead of him, he's really going to have his work cut out. That is a tough couple of people that we're trying to take on the track.
Yeah, you can see this hornet's nest of race cars. 3 racers with varied backgrounds, to be sure. Will we see a move from Chen heading off into turn number 1? You can see Lin taking that defensive line, not hucking that curb at all, staying a little bit wide heading through that section. Looks like it was a good defensive maneuver for her to remain in 18th as it stands at the moment. 5.5 minutes on the clock. Still got 40 minutes of racing action in all, so still a lot to play for in this race. Seeing battles up and down the grid, but I gotta say, Zippy, one battle that we aren't seeing right now is up towards the front, because Joyner has checked out, now pulling a gap of 1.5 seconds between himself and Urgmani. So Joyner in the number 8 car looking to bring this season to a close in the best way possible.
Oh, that's definitely the preferred way of doing it. I've got to keep an eye a little bit here. It looks like we've got a train here of about 3 or 4 cars. Murakami leading the charge, Andrew Love behind, Michael McConnell, Stevie Ray getting in on that, and now Chris Montgomery and Wilkie just about trying to hang on to it as well. Now, I will say Michael McConnell, very, very clean racer, very proficient, and certainly not one of the higher risk drivers. As I say that, it looks like he's really trying to put a little bit of a nose in here, but the question is, like, where is the best place to make a pass? I mean, it's just such a tight track. As Stevie Ray very close there to the back of the number 62 machine.
You can see very close quarters racing heading through the mid-sector of the 7th lap of the race. Some off-track excursions there from Chris Murakami, using all of the space available, doing a little bit of lawn mowing as well, but looks like he's going to hold on to that 8th spot for the time being. However, he's certainly feeling a whole lot of pressure from Andrew Love behind. Is he going to go for the move? They're going to be side by side, heading down the back straightaway off into turn number 10. Love on the inside. Murakami going to try and stick it around the outside, but he doesn't want to lose that on another spot. Look at Michael McConnell. Maybe got to try and get a move done on him. We've got a Spec 2 racer, a Masters racer, and a Spec 1 racer, all covered by a blanket. Heading off now into turn number 1. Looks like Love has officially gotten that move done on Murakami, as McConnell's now getting really risky, nearly making a little bit of contact, trying to bump and run in a Formula Ford race car. That I don't think is the best strategy to go with.
It definitely is not the preferred line. I do see a notification telling me that Russell Telka has had a bit of an incident. We will check on that in just a moment. We're going to stay with this battle for the most part. Stevie Ray currently P3 in the Masters. He's looking to try and make up some positions. Chris Montgomery right behind him, and Wilkie there in tow as well. Now, if I was Wilkie, I would honestly just be trying to finish this race, try and keep it clean, you know, protect your lead. I'm not too sure if he's got this thing in the bag yet. I mean, there are drop weeks to keep in mind. I know the man who would know, Jim Brewster, would be on that like a, I don't know the best reference here. Ron, you got anything in the camp bag for that one?
He would be on it like a fly on a bucket of horse manure. That may be a little bit on the nose too much. Actually, no, I feel like that's a pretty accurate.
Yeah. Maybe not the cleanest, but it did get the point across. As Montgomery and Wilkie have gone round a little bit too close. That may opens the door for Trenton Kramer. He just sneaks through. And Montgomery, great sportsmanship, keeping it back up off the track, making sure he's not in the way of any traffic coming through.
And there you can see Montgomery going off the racetrack. He's got to be towing back to pit lane. Looked like a small little bit of contact with himself and Wilkie. Some close quarters racing heading off into turn number 1, but it's going to cost Montgomery a really good finishing position. Montgomery's always a great driver to follow all throughout the Weekend Warriors world. I remember on one of the first Formula V broadcasts I did here on Slow Motion Broadcasting for the conclusion of Season 3 for 2024, Montgomery actually won that Formula V race overall as a Spec 2 driver. So he's a pretty quick man in Formula Fords and Formula Vs, but sadly a small little bit of fisticuffs breaking out with himself and Wilkie. Loses Wilkie some time as well. He's currently running in the 13th position. So right as we were thinking that Wilkie was maybe going to be a bit more relaxed coming into this race, just hoping to bring it to the checkered flag. Some close quarter stuff heading off into turn number 1. I'm curious, Zippy, if you want to load up a replay so we can get another angle of this.
Yeah, I was just thinking we got to catch up with Russ Telka, and then we're going to get straight to Wilkie. So let's see exactly what happened to this usually a Masters driver. Certainly in the SRF, I believe he is. Now, Formula SRF, he must be the Masters. There we go. Let's have a look. What happened to Russ? Okay, all seems well.
Here we go.
Oh, over rotation.
Yeah, simple spin hang through the 6 and 7 chicane. That's honestly, Zippy, I'm kind of shocked that's the first time we've seen a moment like that hang off through that section.
Yeah, definitely. It's very easily done. Okay, so here we can see with Wilkie behind. Let's take a look from another camera here. Wilkie up on the inside going into turn 1, and yeah, just door kind of closes a little bit, and yeah, that's the end of that. Wilkie able to emerge pretty much unscathed on that, but certainly not the result Montgomery was looking for on that occasion, as I believe Stevie Ray has taken to the pits. He has.
Yeah, I mean, we are officially past the 10-man mark of this race. Usually when we see some of the first racers make their call to come down pit lane, not as a result of any damage or anything like that, but because of the mandatory pit stop that we have to see from all these racers. Stevie, though, making that call to come down pit lane, now running outside of the top 20 as Espen gets a move done on him as Stevie exits pit lane back onto the racetrack. Now, going back to that incident with Wilkie, I think, honestly, something that we haven't mentioned at all throughout this broadcast yet, Zippy, is the fact that some of the curbs around this racetrack, mainly the one through turn number 1, they're lethal. That, I think, was just a simple matter of Wilkie looking at the curb looking at him, and the curb not really liking the cut of his jib. That, I think, is just about what happened a couple of moments ago for those two racers.
Definitely. I mean, it certainly can happen. It looks like Chris Murakami, he's looking to try and make a move on Andrew Love. Michael McConnell applying plenty of pressure behind him. Actually, I gotta say, McConnell, he's been really very feisty today, actually, getting incredibly close to the back of these cars. Let's see if we can get a nose cam. Here you go. Just to put it in perspective, ladies and gentlemen, this is how close these guys are running. Currently, McConnell sat back in P10. P8 just ahead of him is certainly an achievable goal. And Bill Walker, he's a little bit further up the header road, about 4.5, almost 6 seconds. 6 seconds, 4.5, almost 5 seconds up the road from these guys.
I think if we hold on board with that nose shot in the not-too-distant future, we'd probably be able to get a good view of the inside of Chris Murakami's gearbox, because these racers can occasionally get very, very close. I'm sure this battle is going to be no different. I think there may have been an off-track moment, possibly involving Alan Degas, as he's been dropping down the running order for the past few moments. Now down in 18th, I think he may have just rejoined the racetrack after a simple excursion. Here it is. I think Bradshaw may have gotten a piece of this as well. Taking a look at this, heading through the 6th and 7th chicane right now. Bradshaw running strong, maybe picked up a slowdown. You could see some side-by-side racing heading off into the corner, and it was contact. And Degas is really, no, there are 3 cars getting involved in that. I thought it was just 2.
I gotta say, that car does remind me of Yoshi a little bit from the Mario series, but certainly a little bit unfortunate there. But it's nice to see these guys able to keep the car going. And we're going to get back to this battle now. Murakami currently in the 2nd spot in this battle, so no change in the order just yet, but very, very close running between them, about 0.2 of a second between each of these drivers.
It is still very close up and down this field. I gotta say, Zippy, as we see the side-by-side racing nearly flare up between McConnell and Murakami heading off into the final corner. They stay line astern for the time being, but these racers certainly gonna give us a fantastic fight between now and the checkered flag. But the point I was going to raise before, before these drivers decide to have a good race on their hands, that's a car stopped on the inside of turn number 1. Not sure who that is. But we may have to start talking about traffic as well, Zippy. This track, close quarters racing, lap times around about a minute, sometimes a little bit over, sometimes a little bit under that. So traffic may be a big factor in deciding how things are going to shake out for battles up and down the grid.
Yeah, that's definitely a very valid point. If we have a quick look at the track map here, you can see here on the right-hand side, ladies and gentlemen, the sheer density of how, with this being a shorter track and the number of people we have participating today, you can see the sheer density of the track, and there isn't really much space for clean air. Don't get me wrong, if you was going to try and time your pit strategy to avoid traffic, I wouldn't even go down that game. Just pit when it suits you, but certainly a very, very busy circuit indeed.
I feel like trying to time your pit stops and make your strategy call for this race around when you can avoid traffic, especially around a racetrack like this with lap times about a minute long and a lap only being 1.29 miles in length. Trying to time your pit call around that sort of stuff, I'm trying to figure out the right word to describe it. It's like trying to...
Impossible.
It's like, yeah, it's like trying to sew a grenade onto a freshly knit beanie. That's the only way I could describe it. There's no real winning when it comes to something like that. So trying to figure out what sort of pit call these racers are going to try and go for, it's got to be really tough. I think the only thing you can really control in this race is just the stuff that happens on the racetrack. Everything else pretty much entirely out of your hands.
Oh, absolutely. But we're going to have a quick look at this battle here. Now, this is one that we had the treat of dealing with yesterday, albeit in a different spice of machine. It's going to be Full Tulo versus Jason Green. Now, if beating him with a 1 championship wasn't enough, it looks like, don't get me wrong, it may not be a championship at stake today for Full. He's more involved in the Formula Bs, but he's looking to have another crack at Jason Green. That is the coach extraordinaire, and you can see him as well at Faux Speed on Sunday nights with the SRF. He just hosts a practice session there as well. Thank you for doing that, by the way, Jason. And he also as well does the racing line along with Stevie Ray, sometimes Adam Thompson, Josh Wilkie, and the special 4th seat. So if you want to see more of Jason Green, that is the way to do it. A huge part of this community. But Full Tulo absolutely keeping the man honest. Currently, this is a battle going on for 5th place right now.
And in my time interviewing Tulo after that Formula V race yesterday, he was just so pumped up about how things went with that Formula V season, winning in a pretty heart-pumping finish between himself and Green for that championship. There's also another driver, Christopher Berry, who got involved in that fight as well. No relation to James Berry, who's still running at your podium as it stands at the moment, running effectively in no man's land with a bit of a big gap between himself and Monty for P2 and P3. Then you have to go about 4 seconds back to Soren Garrett's in 4th. But these two racers who we're seeing on screen right now, some of the Weekend Warriors' best drivers. They are absolute standout stars in whatever kind of race car they find themselves in. Tulo, the Formula Vs, it kind of makes sense he's a Formula V driver in real life in the UK. He is a brilliant driver and the Season 4 of 2024 Spec 1 champion as well. Green, on the other hand, he's a fantastic driver as well. Do not get me wrong. He's won some championships. He's won plenty of Weekend Warriors races in the past. Both of these racers very fast, and they were very psyched about the battles that they've had all throughout the season. So always cool to see them out on the racetrack together.
Oh, absolutely, and I do believe Tulo is getting close enough to make a move, but we're going to stay with this battle just very briefly, but there's something that has happened to Chris Murakami now. He was getting involved with Andrew Love and Michael McConnell there, but we're going to take a quick look at that replay now. I think these guys are going to behave while we do so just bear with me 1 second here. All right, Ron, what happened to Murakami?
Yeah, let's follow him in the 901 car coming out of turn number 1. He's got McConnell right behind, Andrew Love a little bit farther up the road in front. Let's see, heading through 2 and 3 right now through the braking zone of 4. This corner, as we saw earlier on, it can catch these racers at that small little banking. The camber with that corner is so inviting for a race here. You want to carry as much speed as you possibly can. I compared it to turn 3 at Zandvoort earlier on in the show, and I feel like that comparison really stands to reason. And it was deja vu for Love and nearly a collision with himself and Michael McConnell. That was terrifyingly close for McConnell. I think he may need a change of underwear after that.
It was definitely a brown flag moment, and I believe it was you who quoted that reference before, Ron. Certainly one of those scenarios where you definitely want to make sure you got a absolutely incredible reaction time here. But Jason Green doing everything he can to defend. So if you have a look, they've dropped back from Soren Garrett's, who's currently Soren P4 right now, about 3.4 seconds up the road. These guys, honestly, they're just having fun. Ford will be very aware that Jason Green is competing in the championship standard. So I believe it will be a very, very respectful race. Certainly the sportsmanship between these two has been nothing short of fantastic.
Yeah, these two, even though they've occasionally had some dust-ups, I remember the finish of the race at Leadon On in the Formula V Weekend Warriors Series, where they had a small little collision between the two of them. There was really no sort of animosity between the two of them. Of course, in the heat of battle with the championship on the line, you can occasionally see them battle tooth and nail. That Formula V race yesterday was absolutely fantastic. And if you want to stay up to date of all the fantastic racing action here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, remember to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. I think Daniel Verone briefly got abducted by a UFO. I think he's having some pretty bad connection issues right behind this driver, Michelle Lynn, who are following right now, running in the 16th position. I've seen Verone disconnect about 3 or 4 times ever since I began this little spiel that I'm on right now. Connection issues, never ideal in an iRacer's world, but again, getting drivers from all different corners of the globe running in this series. Got some Americans, got some Canadians, got some people racing from Europe. Occasionally can have that sort of stuff like that happen. And if my memory serves me correctly, Verone is from Pennsylvania, and as someone who's lived in PA my entire life, you got places like the city of Philadelphia where the internet connection usually fairly strong. You literally go 1 mile away from my house outside the city limits, and there's certain areas where you literally get 0 reception at all. So Pennsylvania, probably not the best place to be an iRacer for the simple sake that most of the internet connections that people have, it's basically like a hamster running on a wheel inside of a Cheerio box.
Well, that's definitely the interesting internet connection you got there, Ron. But right now, there's certainly a good connection going on for Andrew Love and Michael McConnell. These guys have been going hard at it for the last 20 minutes of the race so far. But both of them getting caught out, and I'd say that's probably turn 3, turn 4. I feel like Mr. Arkwright from Open All Hours today. It's been an interesting day, but the left-hander they're coming up to here, this one here, certainly the inside line being a little bit slippery here, and Andrew Love, despite being able to take that time, both of these guys getting caught out and losing the rear end of the car. So certainly, it's going to be interesting to see how this battle develops If you have a look at the standings, it is a S1 versus an S2. So as much as they want to fight, it really, you know, the battle isn't between these two. Bill Walker is up the road. Now, we do know that he's in a good pot spot in the championship. So, you know, can Andrew Love catch him? I mean, he's going to have to really put the work in. He's about 5 seconds ahead. You can see him just up the road right now.
I gotta say, this is a fantastic turn of fortune for Bill Walker towards the end of the season. He has kicked on the Hyperjets as of late. Won the last race of the season just 1 week ago at Zandvoort. Let's see if he can go for back-to-back wins in that 319 car. Certainly wouldn't rule it out in that Spec 2 category, considering Andrew Love is about 5 seconds farther back of him. He's also got some lap traffic to deal with. I believe that's Alan DeGassis separating those two cars right now. You also got McConnell right in front of Andrew Love, so those two still going to be battling from start to finish, battling tooth and nail. Now over the halfway mark of this race, looking very good for Joyner, who is still leading it over Jorg Monty, the leader in the Masters category in P2. James Berry looking to try and seal the deal in the Spec 1 championship, finds himself in the final podium position right now. As we're looking at series admin Stevie Ray running in the 17th position, may have a battle on his hands in the not too distant future with himself and Verone. Maybe those connection issues I mentioned earlier on, a hamster running on a wheel that's stuffed inside of a Cheerio box. May have to see that again with Verone. That may play a factor into how Stevie decides that fight. And look at that from Green. Very aggressive on that move with the traffic. That I believe, unless I am very much mistaken, trying to see who that car may be, that I believe... Sancinelli, there we go, so the 257 of Sancinelli. I was about to say, if he goes for a move like that on one of his competitors, I would probably have to pick up my jaw in a million pieces on the floor, because even though it was lap traffic, that still looked a bit ambitious from Green.
He's definitely in a hurry, but I think he's stuck in a situation right now, so Fortulo is going to be saving all of the fuel behind him right now, and don't get me wrong, you want to race the guy ahead, but, you know, I do wonder if Tulo's going to be able to beat him in the pit stop. Like, he's been tucked up right behind Green, and to be honest, I don't feel he's really trying to force a move. He's certainly, you know, he's keeping Green honest. He's applying the pressure, and should the door open, I believe he'll go for it, but he's certainly not pushing the fact.
That's a very good point that you bring up there, Zippy, in reference to those pit stops. Tulo, despite the fact these Formula Ford race cars don't really give a lot of draft, he's still going to be enjoying the small little bit of dirty air and the turbulence coming off of Green's race car and enjoying those better fueled numbers. So I gotta say, it would surprise me if these two racers come down pit lane together, because Tulo probably enjoying the good fuel numbers. He's not even pushing this issue with Green either. Green, meanwhile, he's certainly pushing that race car to the absolute extremes. Those two were nearly pushing each other coming through turn number 7 a couple of moments ago. That was very, very close to contact. But I gotta say, Zippy, I think that's a very good point to raise in reference to these two battling Tulo. Maybe gonna try and win it just on strategy and strategy alone, which won't be the first time we've seen it at all throughout this season.
Well, that's certainly one way of doing it, but if I have a look through the pits right now, the highest placed person who has pit is indeed Stevie Ray. I believe Randall calls him the Pied Piper of pit strategy. So certainly I do wonder as well, if I was Jason Green, would I pit early just to shake 4 off my tail? You could try it, but at the end of the day, if he follows you in the pits, you've gained nothing. All he's going to do is maybe carry a little bit more fuel. It's a tough one to call. Certainly, if you've pre-calculated your fuel, you can get a rough idea, but fuel calculators mean there's only so much accuracy you can get from those.
I mean, in terms of calculations on iRacing, I'll give you a little bit of a good story for you, Zippy. So for the Ray Esports Club Racing League this past Wednesday, we were hearing from all the drivers that, oh yeah, this race is going to be soaked. The weather is going to be absolutely horrendous. Not saying the weather was good as we take a look at a moment involving Boris Asman in the 313 car. Mega sideways heading through the middle sector. Now about to head his way off through turn number 9. Maybe a simple spin from the driver of the 313 car. Very similar to turn 4, and yes, it is a very similar spin to the ones that we've seen in turn 4 all throughout this race thus far. But in terms of iRacing calculations, it was saying like, oh yeah, there's going to be a 100% chance of rain all throughout the 70-minute GT4 race that we had during that broadcast. And then it was bone dry. I mean, the relative humidity pretty much made the air feel like these racers were driving through soup, but it was still, the track was bone dry. So I think in terms of iRacing calculations, even when it comes to fuel, you don't want to trust those at all.
I can definitely relate to the weather system. I literally just did a GT3 race at Daytona this morning, and it's fair to say it was a learning experience, but actually managed to get P8 surprisingly. there's a whole other story behind that. That's a story for a different day, but the weather system can certainly add an extra variable to the iRacing service, and certainly, I mean, it's not so bad with these. They just have the dry tires, I believe. I don't think they have a specific wet tire, but it does make things a little bit more dicey, as I see Jason Green has got even closer as well. And I believe that's a 331 of Boris Esman ahead of him, so he's being pretty good, going a very wide line, letting both of these guys get by. Great sportsmanship there, especially as a new driver here at the Weekend Warriors.
And it goes back to the point that we mentioned earlier on, Zippy. Espen trying everything that he could do to get out of harm's way with those two coming up, barreling up to him like they were going like 14 times the speed of sound. It usually feels like whenever you have to deal with some lap traffic overtaking you. Well, if you are the lap traffic and getting overtaken by some drivers, very much so setting the pace. Green and Tulo at this point in time, they're dealing with the issue that I raised earlier on, Zippy, in reference to lap traffic, because around a racetrack like this, oh so tiny, gonna have to deal with that from start to finish, and even these drivers like Green and Tulo gonna have to deal with that as well. Thankfully, they've been catching them at decent times, as it looks like Cathcart pulls over to the side to let those two by, heading off into turn number 10, as we just saw Espen come into the pits right behind them. That's the thing when it comes to these racers, hoping that they catch up to the lap traffic at the best time, because if you catch up to them hanging into like turn number 4, for instance, that's just going to be a fate worse than death.
Yeah, certainly, and Kevin Adrian was saying in the pits that it almost feels like a multi-class race at times, and certainly with a track as small as this, you can get that vibe. Some of the drivers there are absolutely insane on pace, but to be fair, they're all pretty quick, to be honest. Certainly, I've had my fair share of trying to keep up with them, and you know, it adds an interesting dynamic. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're in the same machinery. You can't just power away on the straight. You've really got to think about it. But the sportsmanship here at the Weekend Warriors has been absolutely fantastic. And I'm really enjoying as well the fact that Jason Green and Fortulo are able to have this battle. But we're going to keep an eye, see what else is going on. It looks like Andrew Love and Michael McConnell are still going at it. 28 minutes in. That's Alan DeGassis, I believe, leading that charge there. But, you know, hanging out and having fun as well. He's probably going to lift here just to try and let these guys by.
I gotta give a quick little lift heading off into the corner. Some of these racers still having to deal with traffic all the time. I gotta say, at this point, the field quite spread out, trying to see if there is a battle that we could keep our eyes on. Certainly these drivers battling with their own minds when it comes to when to come into the pits, what to do in terms of fuel. This may be a battle that we got our eyes on right now. Got to keep our attention on for the time being. Murakami running 11th, Wilkie running in 10th. Wilkie still in a good spot when it comes to the Spec 2 class, running second at the moment, albeit Walker just came down pit lane not terribly long ago, and we are still in the midst of the pit cycle. But Wilkie doing just about everything he needed to do. Barring a major disaster, it was going to be his in the Spec 2 category. Running 10th at the moment, it's probably not the result that he may have wanted to cap this season off, but still, 10th, that's everything you need to do. Consistency is key. And to finish first you have to finish. I've read both of those things in fortune cookies before, but Wilkie doing just about everything he needs to do to try and hold on to that Spec 2 championship, as that's Bradshaw spinning, coming out of the 6 and 7 chicane. Thankfully, he does not get hit by any more cars, and he toes back to the pits in the process.
Well, that definitely, I take no responsibility for that. Just happened to put the camera on and round he went. But these guys are still going hard at it. Michael McConnell and Andrew Love. It's going to be interesting to see on how they approach the pit strategy for this race.
Yeah, the pit strategy going to be a big deciding factor in how things are going to go for these racers. A season which has had a whole lot of moments of action all throughout, whether it comes to those pit calls, the pit strategy calls. I keep saying pit calls. That's usually something the crew chief gives, not the driver, unless you're a driver for Ferrari and Formula One. That's probably a discussion for a whole nother day. I'll tell you what, if I had a strategist as good as the ones that Ferraris have, my resting heart rate would probably be about 14 billion. But looking at Andrew Love coming down pit lane, dealing with that pit entry, he's coming into the pits from the Spec 2 lead, going to relinquish it to Wilkie unless he comes in too. Murakami going to be following Love, so that's going to be another driver running second at the moment of the Masters Racers, 12th overall for the time being. That's going to be a run for the both of them. That's Bradshaw. He just decided to tow back to pit lane. I can't necessarily blame him. He was running, I believe, at that point in time in either 14th or 15th, one lap down. Now, though, he's towed back to pit lanes. We see Love exiting the pits. A very quick splash and dash for fuel in the 544 car. Going to exit out. Pretty good spot for him to exit out in as Monty now comes in from second.
You say quick, that was like a 15.2 pit, and you know, that seems like a little bit long, actually. If I have a look at the numbers right now, we've got quite the variation. So if I have a look, actually, Brad Cathcart, he pit for 6 seconds, but he was involved in an earlier incident, so that would have just been a fast repair. If I have a look, Daniel Tubbs, he was in for 1:06, so okay, he's out of it. But if I go to Stevie Ray, now Stevie Ray, we know is pretty hot with pit strategy. He was in for about 13.5 seconds. Andrew Love, 15.5. Bill Walker, 16.5. Looking at these timings, if I have a look back as well, Russ Telka, he's 13.3. You know, Daniel Baron, 13.3. I'm wondering if a couple of these guys are carrying extra fuel or if the Thompson Trophy is indeed going to make an appearance. As I see Michael McConnell, he's coming out of the pits now, and Trenton Kramer, he's in the pits as well.
Yeah, there is Kramer in the number 20 car, and right in the back, a shot was Ian Joyner, the dominant leader of this race, coming in with 31, nearly 32 minutes on the clock. James Berry, the driver of the 100 car, looking to complete a 100% fully cooked out season to win that Spec 2 championship. Joyner stopped in his pit stall now. Berry looking to follow him in too. You got Garrett and Tulo also coming into the pit lane as well. As I said not terribly long ago, about the fact that Tulo and Green were running where they were and the discussion of fuel saving from Tulo. Just saw that got put on full display with those two racers. Tulo now going to be exiting the pits in a couple of moments' time. Joyner's come out with the lead. Barry slotted in P2. Gotta say, Barry having a much shorter run down the pits compared to Ian Joyner. Monty going to lose out and all of that. There's Tulo exiting the pits, and he's actually going to lose out on a lot of time to Green. So even with that late call to come into the pits, Tulo, looking at our live timing screens, he spent more time in the pit stall than Jason Green. So either Jason Green fed his mechanics a bunch of Red Bull, that or Tulo just decided to, I don't know, go use a restroom during his pit stall. That's a little bit surprising there, Zippy. What do you think?
Oh, I just heard something smash, but if I have a look right now, I've got the pit times up, and you can see Ian Joyner took 14 seconds. James Barry, 10.6 seconds. Now, he's going to be someone very interesting to keep an eye on for fuel. That's an incredible difference there. Don't get me wrong, we saw the gap alone between Jason Green and Tulo. You know, 0.4 of a second, and you can see the impact on track, but 3.4 seconds between Barry and Joyner. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens with that, as that's a spinner. I believe that's Ross Telka.
Yeah, that I believe it is. He's stopped in the gravel trap on the outskirts of the final corner. There he is rejoining it in the 260 car, looking to try and see if that car has any sort of suspension tweaks to it. May have been a simple spin. I kind of talked about this earlier on in the show in reference to my experience in the past running Formula Fords around this racetrack. Heading through that final corner is oh so tough. I remember in the officials, I think it was probably about like 5 or 6 laps in, I had qualified in like second or third. It was a very good qualifying performance from me, and then tried to get moved on heading off into that corner, half spun it, stopped, then everything was fine, and then someone understeered through the corner and just pow right into the side of me. So that's a very tricky section of the racetrack, and a very tricky course as well. You know, despite being just 10 corners long, 10 corners long, is that even a term? It's got 10 corners around this racetrack. The fact that it's 1.3 miles long leads it to there being no real resting point for these racers. This is it right now. We're following Julian Shen in that 814 car. Just got onto the back straightaway not terribly long ago, and he has to worry about a corner right about now. So that's it. That's the only sort of rest that these racers have. It's an arduous one for these drivers to go around, because you're worrying about the tires, you're worrying about turning all the time, and it's also the mind games as well, because it feels like you don't get a single rest around this place at all. Unlike Zandvoort, where he kind of had that long start-finish straightaway to kind of take your mind off it all. It's also funny to raise the fact that the final 2 racetracks from this season have both had the shoehorn chicane version of it. So iRacing throwing these drivers for a little bit of a curveball with those odd choices of racetracks to bring this official season to a close, which of course is just about the same schedule here for the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors.
Well, I can hear Kevin Adrian saying that Jason Green is a master of fuel savings and putting just the right amount in, and I'm not going to disagree with him, but I do want to give a shout out to Yi and Chen. debut event here at the Weekend Warriors, and they are currently the hard charger, up 14 positions. So I've got to say, what an absolutely fantastic job. Tamara's there in the chat. Let me know the undercut seems to have worked for Stevie Ray. Let me find him a second here. Where is he? Oh my gosh, that's why he's all the way up in P8, ladies and gentlemen.
Holy cow,
gained.
Stevie.
Yeah. The Stevie Ray
that is
shotgun.
Brilliant. That is well done from Stevie in the 911 car, making his way up 8 spots. Well done from Stevie. We saw him come into the pit lane, probably the first driver to make a run down pit lane, not because of damage or any sort of penalties or anything like that. So he's just been very, very good about managing his race, putting on a very strong show, and keeping his nose to the grindstone. As it stands currently, he finds himself second in the Masters category, but the racer who found himself in third is Chris Murakami. I think he's just had an off-track excursion or some sort of disconnect. He's marked as being out of it. Has he towed back to pit lane, or has he completely left the session? The driver of the 901 car had a very strong showing here at Tsukuba, but I think things have fallen apart for him. He's now running down in 15th. He's not out there on the racetrack either. He's gone sucked up by UFO, as that's a spin heading through turn number 1. Who's that going around? That, I believe, may be Telker, who just spun in front of this pack of McConnell and Stevie Ray. They may be side by side, hang off into turn number 4 in a couple of moments' time. There's Telker spun around in the 260 car. He's now towed back to pit lane as well. But I'm still confused about Murakami. I think there's been some sort of incident there, Zippy, that or some sort of disconnect. Either way, that's got to take him out of this. We may see a side-by-side fight in the not-too-distant future with Barry and Monty.
Yeah, so these guys have been slowly getting a little bit closer together now, and you can see here, Jorg is absolutely on it. James Barry, he was able to get definitely a shorter pit stop, but not enough. Ian Joyner still having a 6-second gap, but I think this is going to be where the spice of the action is going to be in the closing stages. We've got about 2.5 minutes left to go, and these guys, I think, are going to be wanting even more. Certainly a very, very friendly competition, very, very similarly matched. If you look at the I rating, just about 150 points between them. So in theory, on paper, there isn't a lot in it, but certainly I've had the pleasure of racing Jorg, and I can say he is a very talented individual. James Barry, on the other hand, never raced him on track, and then if I could, I've never managed to get close enough.
Yeah, that's exactly my experience with Barry as well. I've commentated a whole lot of races with Barry in them, whether it be this season of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, last season where he was part of some of the broadcasts that I was a part of, or whether it be my experience covering Radical SR10 races that he's a part of. Usually my experience with commentating races that Barry is a part of. There was one time in which him and I ran in the same race. I finished down in 12th in a top split Radical SR10 race. Meanwhile, he was battling for the win and actually grabbed the checkered flag in first after a fantastic last corner dive bomb at Sebring. So Barry, he is a very quick driver, infuriatingly quick, and that's infuriatingly sideways for Jorg Monty coming at turn number 7. That's going to cool off that fight with Barry and Monty coming to the checkered flag in the not-too-distant future. A simple little loss of grip coming out of that corner. It's the only mistake he's made all throughout this race, but it's going to be the one that costs him the most. Still running in third, but there's basically going to be no hope in terms of him and Barry swapping positions.
Well, certainly, if you're pushing a car to the limit every now and again, it will remind you that you have crossed the line, that threshold of grip. But I gotta say, even Chen, he's having an absolutely fantastic job. I'm proud of the guy for being up 14 spots. But then not only that, he's tagging with the likes of Josh Wilkie. Wilkie's definitely not a slouch here. He's going to be heading up to S1 next season. I think it's been universally agreed on that the man has pace. But look at that. He's got the slipstream. He's going for it. And, yeah, he's going to try and make a move as they head around the final turn.
Here we go, Chen going for that move. My apologies, Gyun Chen going for that move on Wilkie, and it's going to be successful to slip his way up into the 11th position. Got only 5 seconds left on the clock. So coming to the white flag next time by are a lot of these. Actually, no, coming to the checkered flag next time by for these racers. Man, what am I saying throughout this show? Joyner, though, he's going to be dominant. You can tell based off the fact that Stevie, who we're riding on board with right now in 8th, he's slowly at risk of getting lapped by Joyner, but it's not going to be enough as Ian Joyner has crossed the start-finish line to win the final race of this season. Barry finishes in second to become your Spec 1 champion in back-to-back seasons. Monty finishes in
here we
third to
go.
win the Masters fight. But looking now, will we see a side-by-side finish with McConnell and Stevie Ray? It's going to come down to the last corner of this race. 41 laps in all. It's all come down to this. Stevie looking to go for that move, heading off down the inside into turn number 10, but not going to be close enough. It's going to be McConnell winning out in that fight. Stevie going to finish in 8th, and we have Love, Walker, and Shen rounding out your Spec 2 podium and your top 11, but waiting now for Josh Wilkie to come across the line, which I believe will seal the deal in the Spec 2 championship for him. But Joyner, he's the one that takes the final checkered flag of this season. I gotta say, Zippy, this may be a sign of things to come for season 1 of 2025, because Ian Joyner, when he's been racing in this series, he has been quick to be sure. If he's a consistent force throughout season 1 of 2025, we may have a fantastic championship fight on our hands.
Oh, I'm not going to disagree with you for even a moment there. I've got to say the battle between Jason Green and Fortulo, that definitely spread out. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but certainly an interesting race for sure. A lot of fun going on, and certainly I got to say I'm really impressed with you and Chen. I mean, 15 positions gained. Trenton Kramer gained 10 positions as well. You know, Jeff Wipka, he was up 10 spots. So certainly a lot of movement there in the field. Let's see if we can get these results in for you, Ron.
Yeah, let's get these final results loaded up from the final race of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors season here for season 4 of 2024. It's been a fantastic season, and yep, we're going to hold that thought for a while. Here we go. So it's a Weekend Warriors tradition here. These drivers just absolutely turning their race cars into hoopty rods. How many flips have we seen thus far? Not too sure. We're seeing some bumping going on here. Oh my God, that's Bill Walker coming in for the kill. And, oh, boy, we got, who was that? I just saw shoot across. That was Jorg Mani, who I just saw go into the hay bale barriers around this racetrack at 1,000 bajillion miles an hour. It's a Weekend Warriors tradition. These drivers always like to play Crash 'em Up Wreckfest when everything is said and done. Lots of these race car parts probably going to end up for sale on eBay when everything is said and done, or even Craigslist for that matter. Trying to think what would actually be a Japanese equivalent of that. Yes, slight damage. Sell it on Auto Trader, like slightly used, couple of dents here and there, but nothing major. Meanwhile, the front right and the left rear are like 5 inches apart. It's so crumpled up. But these race cars and these racers having a lot of fun to bring this season to a close. I think all of them have lost the ability to move, so that may be. There's Michelle Lynn's race car, not looking in factory shape at all. But with that small little detour out of the way, think we can get those results loaded back up and go through the final results of this season. Ian Joyner grabs the final checkered flag of this season, but it's nowhere near enough for James Berry to lose that Spec 1 championship. It was pretty set in stone heading into this race. That just about seals it for Berry. He's your Spec 1 champion, unless I'm very much mistaken here for Season 4 of 2024. That's going to be Jorg Mani finishing in 3rd, grabbing another Masters win. That'll also seal the deal in his respective class championship fights. Then we have Soren Garrett's finishing in 4th, Jason Green in 5th, Thortulo finishing in the 6th spot. Then we have Michael McConnell in 7th, Stevie Ray in 8th, Andrew Love in 9th, Bill Walker going to round at your overall top 10. Guyan Chen going to be finishing in 11th. Josh Wilkie grabbing the Spec 2 championship, finishing this final race of the season in P12. That's Trent Kramer, Paul Jackson, and Alan DeGassis rounding at your top 15.
As we have a look at P16, we've got Michelle Lynn with the regular Formula V driver. Daniel Barone takes 17th, and Daniel Tufts in 18th. There we go, there's a button. And we have a look at 19th. Jeff Wipka takes 19th. Brad Cathcart, definitely not the day he was looking for today. He takes 20th with Edgar Sancinelli in 21st. Boris Essman on their first time out takes 22nd with Chris Murakami. I believe he had some sort of connection issue near the end. He takes 23rd. Russ Talker, sorry Russ, definitely not the day you were looking for. Actually, neither of the Russes had much luck today with Russ Lundberg in 25th. Bradshaw takes 26th with Chris Montgomery in 27th. Michael Knapson takes 28th. Kevin Adrian certainly caught up in that early race collision with Antonio Rista in 29th. 29th and 30th. And David Payne takes 31st. That does indeed close out our grid and indeed the final season. But I understand you've been able to catch up with Ian Joyner there, Ron.
Yes, I have been able to do that. I'm going to drag him by the collar here into the commentary booth and have a chat with Joyner, who takes the final checkered flag of the season. And now, Ian, looked like a pretty smooth day of racing. You started from the pole, you gunned it off the line, and then it was from our perspective, seemed to be smooth sailing from start to finish. So talk us through a pretty dominant performance here at Tsukuba.
Yeah, it was good fun. I enjoy the track. I've not driven that layout before. I did do a couple of officials yesterday, so it took a little bit of time getting used to that. Yeah, it all went pretty well in hindsight, but it's funny how 40 minutes goes. It's kind of partly goes quick because you just have to concentrate the whole time, but also it's a lot of laps. It's a lot of laps to Tsukuba. Yeah, and it's in hindsight it all looks great, but you're only like one little lockup away from spinning or catching another car or something like that. So it's all messing the pits up. So it's just nice to get through it all without anything untoward happening.
Yeah, just a fairly smooth day of racing for you from start to finish. Not having a whole lot of headaches to deal with outside of maybe the traffic. We talked about that throughout the broadcast. Can you talk us through how difficult it was trying to manage traffic, which probably felt like a consistent force all throughout the 40-ish laps of racing that you had today?
Yeah, it's one of those things I think is everyone gets a bit of it at some point. I maybe should have pitted a little bit earlier because I came up to 3 cars. I know someone spun, but I never had anything really scary. And to be honest, most of the people in this series have just been brilliant with that. They're all pretty good at not racing and trying to make it easy and just keep out of everyone's way. So it was all good really from that point of view. Again, you can go wrong so quickly, but mostly it was all fine. And I just drove as quick as I could at the start to try and break that draft because I know something can go wrong so easily. So I just kind of, if I could get a buffer, wanted to get one, and then you just pretty well hot lapping after that.
Yeah, it certainly seemed like you were in a hot lap session all throughout that race, considering the gap that you had to the cars behind you. And I want to ask you about this season as a whole. We've seen you appear from time to time, and whenever you have, you've been pretty fast. Grabbed a couple of wins thus far this season. I believe you cap it off with 2 straight. So I want to ask you about your thoughts on Season 4 of 2024, and what your thoughts may be heading into Season 1 of 2025 here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors.
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever raced with it. I think I must have been on Stevie's email list for a couple of years. I was looking at the V's a little while ago, and it's just, life and everything gets in the way. And this time I was really trying to do a decent amount of FF racing this season. So I saw there was the FF races, so I dipped into a few of them. But I hadn't really committed to the time slot or anything like that. I hadn't done the format or anything before, so I just kind of dipped my toe in. But it's such a nice community. Some great races. Yeah, maybe I'll see me back. If I do it again, I might try and make a whole season. I love the V as well, so I might give that a go too. Just love single seaters.
I'll tell you what, the V's are pretty insane as well, and you could catch all of that action on Saturday here on SMB. But with that subtle plug out of the way, I will also say that it'd be very nice to see you make a hard challenge for the championship, because I think just based off the pace that we've seen, especially at a race like this, you're probably going to be a driver who we would have to keep our eyes on when it comes to that championship fight. Not terribly long, not terribly long into the future. But Ian, we'll let you go and celebrate this victory here at Tsukuba, and I'll ask you one quick question before we wrap things up. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, so all the drivers in the series, really, they've been great all the way through. Organisers, you guys for broadcasting it. It's it's really nice to be able to point and say, look, here's the stream. So yeah, thanks. It's appreciated. Good job.
Thank you as well, Ian, for joining us in the commentary booth. Well done on a well-driven season and a well-driven race here at Tsukuba to grab the victory, and excited to see wherever it is in the not-too-distant future, man. Thanks for joining us.
Nice, guys. Catch you again.
And that right there was Ian Joyner taking the checkered flag as your Spec 1 winner here today. And I'm going to do Zippy a little bit of a service because I think he's very desperate to go use a restroom. I'm going to bring in Josh Wilkie to have a little chat with him and interview the Spec 2 champion here from Season 4 of 2024. We believe you did. I mean, bearing in mind that's relying off of my math skills, which are about as good as the math skills of like a medieval peasant. But still, according to our math, the math here on this broadcast, we think you may have gotten it done in the Spec 2 championship fight. So Josh, talk us through this race here at Tsukuba.
Yeah, this was a bit of a difficult one. I didn't really get any practice. That chicane kind of surprised me that we were running this layout and had to learn it pretty quick and didn't even really get it down till the end of the race there. But today was pretty much just about trying to stay alive kind of just getting out there and racing. Really, I don't think I was ever going to get a better position than I've already gotten this year to replace anything or one of my bad scores. But just to get out and race, and I think that I got it. I think Bill probably would have had to get first place or something to take the win. But amazing competitor all season. He definitely had the pace on me today. I could not catch him. It was just a pretty great race. Kept her together.
Yeah, it was a pretty good race, and off the back of what happened about 1 week ago at Zandvoort, which was maybe a little bit disappointing with that collision with yourself and Brewster, I'm sure you're probably very happy to just be able to bring it home in one piece. This track, we were talking all throughout the broadcast, me and Zippy were about the challenges surrounding this racetrack, just trying to keep a calm, cool, and collected head around a racetrack like this where there's no real room to rest at all. And I want to kind of ask you about that, because with only 10 corners at 1.3 miles or something like that, this racetrack's quite hectic, especially in a field of race cars as big as this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like those first 4 or 5 laps were like a procession pretty much. You're basically just staying in a line, trying not to, get in any trouble. The track is so narrow and so tight, and the braking zones it's just accordion after accordion after accordion. So you really, really have to be aware of yourself and the guy behind you. And to be honest, it looks like everybody did a really, really good job today. Super impressed. So this is not an easy track to wheel around with. I don't know how many cars were out there, but it felt like a lot. Really good job to everybody for keeping it clean, and even the lap cars and everything like that too, getting out of the way and stuff. It was it was a good race and definitely a challenge. Tsukuba is always a pretty big challenge.
And speaking of challenge, it's kind of been a running joke all throughout this season that you're probably going to be Spec 1 bound for season 1 of 2025. So I want to ask you 2 quick questions. What are your thoughts heading into next season, and what's your preferred form of alcohol?
Yeah, so I usually, have a little drop of whiskey maybe later to celebrate for sure. I don't really drink, but I have a nice little bottle of whiskey that I'll probably have a little sip of later on to celebrate. But it's just been a pretty great season out there. It's been difficult. This is my first season in this car really driving it at all. Or no, actually, I think I did last season a bit, but didn't really get my hands around. It's the first season I felt like I kind of understood the car and found some pace, and ended up taking the Spec 2 win. So I'm really looking forward to, going up to Spec 1, and there's no better way to do it than take the Spec 2 win. So I'm pretty happy about that, and it means a lot to me. It's thing I don't talk about very often, but I have a bit of a physical disability here as well that I have to struggle through sometimes. Racing gets a little harder near the end of the season here too, but everybody's raced so good out there. I've had such a blast doing this. It means so much to me to be out there with you guys and racing and everything, and all these competitors out there. I just can't thank you and Stevie and Adam and everybody who does all the back end work, Jim, and my competitors out there as well, racing me hard and clean every race. And this is a blast. It means more to me than you guys know.
I gotta say as well, Josh, it's quite the odd thing, considering that when I first joined the Weekend Warriors world as a commentator, you were usually the producer for these Formula Ford shows. So to go from producer to racer and now to be a champion, I'm sure it's a very good rise to be sure. And you'll also be trying to look for one in the Spec Racer Fords later on today. Considering that I'm not usually on those broadcasts, I'm not familiar with what track we're actually going to be running at for the SRFs later on. So I want to ask you, whatever track it is, what are your thoughts heading into... Actually, I remember now, it's Oran Park. So what are your thoughts heading into Oran Park for the SRFs?
Yeah, Oran Park's a bit of a challenge as well. That one's going to be interesting. Again, it's about keeping the car clean and trying not to get in trouble around there. I guess it's fairly similar to this in the sense that there's a lot of kind of slow corners and it's pretty darn technical. It undulates a lot more though. So yeah, it should be an interesting one. I think all I have to do there again is I'm not sure I can even better my position unless I punch way above my weight there. So I'm pretty sure I got that one wrapped up as well as long as things don't go too hairy. And I'm just looking forward to racing again with these guys and getting into next season, hopefully finding some more pace, and maybe I can fight with the big boys there at the front.
I'm sure you're going to be braced with an umbrella as well. Not because it's going to be raining, but because you don't want to get whacked in the head by one of those falling anvils. Those industrial-grade umbrellas tend to help out some of these races from time to time. But Josh, awesome to have a chat with you. Awesome to be a part of shows whenever we are on one. Got to be on the air together for the Wednesday Night Ray Esports Club Racing League. But before then, got the SRF race to deal with. So I'll let you get your thanks and shout-outs before you get some practice time in the SRF.
Yeah, so massive shout-outs to you guys, my wife, my parents that watch, the big guy upstairs, of course, making all this possible, and yeah, just everybody at the Ray Esports League here. It means so much to me to be out there racing with you guys every week, and I just have a blast doing this. It's so amazing. Like you mentioned before there, I started producing and then racing, and it just couldn't be a better scenario, man. I've been looking for a group of people to hang with and race with, and I found it, and it just means so much to me. So thanks, guys, and thanks everybody else, and congrats to everyone out there.
Thank you for joining us as well, Josh. Always nice to have a chat with you. I'm not just saying that because we work on broadcast together, but well done on the championship. Well done, a well-executed season. And we'll stop bleeding your ear off and let you get some practice time for the SRS, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
And that right there was Josh Wilkie. Very odd to interview someone who I've had chats with many times on and off the air. But Zippy, I'll finally let you get a word in edgewise since you're back from your quick trip to the restroom and interview this man, Jörg Mani.
Well, the excitement was just too much. I wasn't going to be able to hold it to speak to this man, the driver of the 925 machine. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Masters champion as well for the Formula 1600s. Jörg, what an absolutely incredible drive, not just today, but throughout the season. Tell us a little bit about what was going through your head today as you took to Tsukuba.
Yeah, like I several times mentioned, that Ian and James are so freaking fast every single week. And I thought, I hope I can stay with them. And then my last quali lap, or second last, I think, I'm not sure anymore, was actually quite good. And I just placed myself in between those, and that helped me quite a bit. And but it was really, really intense. I really struggled to stay behind Ian, and I thought, okay, if I do that now, I will overdrive the car and I might spin. And so I lifted a little bit, just to keep my car self-calm and try to do my own pace, and that worked. And I really have to watch the lap times, because I like to have steady lap times, and I'm not sure how steady they were, but I felt incredibly good, and I saw always the times in front to Ian. It was always increasing a little bit, and back to James, and I kept actually the distance quite well, because we were in between 110s, 210s each single lap, and it was a good feeling. And so I think I'm looking forward for the next season. I just told Ian, next season I'm going to beat you guys.
Well, I've got absolutely no objection to you taking the light to James Barry, Ian Joyner, and indeed anybody else who tries to get in your way of taking hold of that championship. Certainly yourself and Antonio Reese have had a lot of good banter, but certainly more in the SRFs I found that to be. But I got to say, congratulations, Jörg. And before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to thank?
Yeah, of course, Stevie and his companions for him for creating, of course, that league, and it's just fantastic. I'm actually only racing this league. I'm not doing anything else, and to you guys for the great content you always create every single week, and I really love to listen to them. It's fantastic, and I'm just happy to be a member of that league.
Well, that's definitely some very beautiful words. Thank you, Jörg, and we'll have to try and get you some hearing aids sorted out. Certainly listening to my voice, you're going to need something like that. Or maybe if we go back to the whole alcohol content thing. But Jörg, thank you very much, and congratulations again. And I'm going to make a little bit of an assumption here. We're going to see you at Owen Park in the Spec Racer Ford very shortly.
Yes, you will. I might even qualify this time.
Maybe. We'll see. But
Yeah,
ladies
we'll
and gentlemen, Jörg Mani, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Well, it is always a pleasure getting to speak to Jörg Mani, but I believe we've got one more person to go through, and especially as it is the end of the season. Have you been able to catch up with this gentleman here, who I certainly know that I couldn't? It's Andrew Love.
Hey, guys.
Oh, well, thank you very much for joining us here, Andrew Love. I'll tell you what, Zippy, catching up to all these drivers is probably the most amount of exercise I've done in about 10 years. But Andrew, well done on a pretty good drive here at Tsukuba, taking the Spec 2 checkered flag. So talk us through this race. It looked very, very tough out there for your racers in the Formula Fords.
It was very tough. It was a benefit to be up at the top of the pile, where you have a better chance of missing all the spinners. Just staying consistent, not doing strange moves. I made one official pass. All my other passes were just people spinning and getting out of the way. But it was It was a very fun race. I actually felt comfortable in the car on this track. I just used the iRacing base setup with full fuel, and it just hooked up for me. I felt comfortable. I had a good practice time. I qualified second or third in class, and I had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, it looked like a pretty fun race out there for you racers in the Formula Fords, but with a fun racetrack, may not lend itself to some overtaking opportunities baked into this racetrack. You mentioned how you got like only one real attempted overtake done. The rest of them were some drivers getting involved in their own little schmozzle. So I want to ask you about that. Around this racetrack, was it hard to even think about getting some overtakes done, considering there's really only a couple of opportunities to even go for a move? Do you think that's part of the reason why that's the case? Is it really hard to pass here?
It is very difficult to pass here, but I think you can probably force your situation. If you're feeling confident enough, you can probably, do a little bit of late braking up the inside and just stick your nose in there and get in the driver heads, get in their mirrors. Make them think. Be on their left side, be on their right side, coming into the same corner. You just start getting in their head, and maybe they'll open up a hole for you. So if you really wanted to, you could force your way through. But that's not the way I race. I usually just kind of pull in behind somebody and just motor it through and try not to make any mistakes. So I pulled in behind Michael McConnell and just kind of followed him around.
It seemed like a pretty good strategy for you today, man. Got you the victory in Spec 2, which I'm sure you're not going to be upset with at all. So I want to ask you, before you go off and celebrate this win in the Spec 2 category here at Tsukuba today, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Once again, thanks to the sponsors. Thanks to Stevie for putting the league together. Thanks for all the admins for doing all they do. There's a lot of work that goes in behind the scene. They put in a lot of time on that. Thanks to you guys for doing the broadcast. It's a great broadcast. I always go back and watch it after I finish a race. Thanks to all the community out there. Thanks to the other racers on the track. It's just a great bunch of guys and girls. Michelle.
There you go. Always got to make that distinction. But
yeah,
Andrew, thank you very much for joining. Yep.
Yeah,
sorry to butt in there.
No, it's all right. I always feel bad, calling her one of the guys. I got to make sure I don't assume, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Always.
Probably not.
Yeah. That's all right. You always
not going down.
Yeah, I'm just digging it. I'm digging a hole. I can't get out of it.
Yeah, so we'll leave it be. I'll hand you a ladder to get out of that hole if you need it.
You.
But Andrew, thank you for joining us in the commentary booth.
Michelle's
well done on
laughing
the
in
Spec
chat.
2 victory here today. Michelle's laughing in the chat as well. And I think you got away with one there, Andrew. But well done on the race, and excited to see you back at it on the track wherever it is in the not too distant future, man. Thank you for joining us.
I'll be in the surfs in a few minutes. All right, thank you guys.
Alrighty, and that right there was Andrew Love taking the Spec 2 victory here for the final race of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors season, a season which has had fantastic moments baked into it all throughout. And I'll tell you what, for the folks tuning into this broadcast who may not know how to get into this series, of course it is a league race. There's a way to do that. It will pop up a small little barcode on screen for you to get started over on the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors Discord server. And from there, you can be a part of all the racing action. Be a part of the action here, broadcasted every single Sunday on Slow Motion Broadcasting. And speaking of, if you want maybe have a chat with us after one of these Formula Ford or Spec Racer Ford or Formula V or whatever it is broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, scan that QR code on screen right now to join the SMB Discord server. We've got warm cookies and some milk as well for all you drivers or anyone who wants to join in the server here as well. But Zippy, this was a brilliant season from start to finish. Some champions crowned, but when everything is said and done, it's some drivers who we've seen in the series in the past. James Berry grabbing 2 straight Spec 1 championships. Monty winning in the Masters, and our very own Josh Wilkie getting the job done in Spec 2. So before we wrap things up for the final broadcast of the season, final thoughts on this season.
Well, to be honest, my final thoughts I'm going to put on hold for a minute because I had a message from Stevie Ray earlier. Now, for those of you that don't know, he is like the main organizer. I say the main, he's the guy who's been running this for, I think it's about 15 years now. And he's not feeling 100%, so I'm going to read what he's put to me. Okay, so he goes, don't know if I will join the normal end of season interview today, still coughing and hacking. Okay, so let's obviously wish Stevie gets a bit better. Please pass on my deepest thanks to everyone who makes these leagues what they are, and that includes SMB. One man doesn't create the reputation this community and these leagues have. It's a result of input, attitudes, and efforts of all warriors. But a huge shout out and special thanks to JG2, that's Jason Green, ladies and gentlemen, for all his time with after race reviews, vids, and highlights for the racing line. Adam, that's Adam the Rabbit Ranger Thompson. We're missing him. Yep, we are. Hope everything's going okay over there. Shout out to Jim Brewster and Michelle Lynn for their fantastic work with the FB community as well. I'm going to say I'm going to back Stevie up the whole way with this. And to our Weekend Warriors admins for taking the time to share their thoughts and concerns as well. It's an honor to be part of this. Truly looking forward to seeing what the next year brings. And I got to say, I couldn't have put it any better way. Stevie Ray there showing his appreciation for all the hard work that's gone in this season. But before we head off to the SRFs, let's talk about the upcoming shows. Well, we've already told you SRFs is going to be coming in, well, not very long, about 45 minutes actually. If you want to tune in on Wednesday though, we do have the Ray Esports Club Racing League. That has a mixture of real race drivers and sim racers. They're going to be in the Formula Vs and the Spec Racer Fords there at Sebring, with the Weekend Warriors then coming back next week on Sunday for the UK Tour. That's going to be Cadwell Park in the FVs. It's going to be Alton Park in the 1600s, and then Thruxton, the new UK track in the SRFs. As we have a look as well, Pit Road Productions, well, they're going to be busy. They're going to have a race there in December before the winter break, and that's going to be the Radical SR10 at Spa. So if you want to see some guys and girls fight it out to win a chance to drive a real Radical, that's the place to do that. But Ron, why don't you close us out, sir? It's been a fun race, but we need to get ready for these Spec Racer Fords.
That you certainly do. Randall McGrew is going to be on call for those Spec Racer Fords as he usually is. Meanwhile, I'm going to go off on my usual adventures, walking off into the forest, and I will not be contactable for the next few days. But still, a brilliant season here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. A bit nice as well to return to these, as the usual viewers of the Weekend Warriors know, used to be a part of these broadcasts when they were with a different broadcaster, and a small little space in between last season, but it's been fantastic to be a part of this season, a season which had fantastic storylines and fantastic racetracks and races thrown in throughout as well, and I'm sure that Season 1 of 2025 is going to be absolutely no different. But to bring this season to a close for one final time, that will just about do it. And so, for myself, Ron Maunz, Daniel Zippy Salmon, joining me in the commentary booth, working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler as well, all the drivers on track that bring the racing action to life, Stevie for all the wonderful work that he does behind the scenes, and you, the viewer, for tuning into these broadcasts week after week. I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and stay tuned for one final time for Randall McGrew on the Spec Racer Fords.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We are live for the first time on slow motion broadcasting with the FF Weekend Warriors. We're at Sebring this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I saw a little bit of rain here in the practice session, but we'll get to that here in 1 second. My name is Adam Thompson. I'm joined in the booth by Randall McGrew.
These three going right at it. We see you're getting really, really squirrely. There.
Oh, no!
Some contact. Oh no! Jurg and Antonio, the two Masters leaders, both with issues and now dropping down the order.
There's a dicing through the curbs. Our lead two. As that's Instaman just slossing it up the inside through McIntyre there. Beautifully done by the Icelandic driver as there's a big incident happened behind somewhere. Gonzaga losing a lot of places back.
Almost touching at that point. They're around there heading into the closing stages of the track. Not quite there yet. Heading through what I'm calling the horseshoe, but let's not get into my drawing skills at this point. Nothing but clear track ahead of them at this point, so no one should be able to interfere in that battle. Side by side, nearly had contact there. That's going to put Kabanka on the inside for this next hairpin. This could be what decides it, and he's gone right on the outside, actually trying to cover off the car. I do wonder if Barry is going to be close enough to potentially slipstream. They've got 2 corners left to go. This is penultimate one now. Barry right up close, 0.3 of a second. I'm not sure it's going to be close enough, 0.2 of a second. He's got to keep his foot on that loud pedal. Catches a little bit of a curve, but has Kabanka done it? Barry going to the inside, and Kabanka gets it.